Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Record Breakers. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan. Here with me, of course, on this journey, as always, of sharing music with each other, the group, the squad, the quorum. We've got Brett.
We sure do.
We've got Patrick.
Yes, I agree.
And we've got Drew.
Squad goals.
Yeah. We're here to talk about music, and the provider of the music this week is me. It's my turn this week, and we come off of last week talking about an unexpected new direction of sound from an artist like Childish Gambino, and I decided to follow it up with an album that was released a week, like a week and a half prior to that album, by another group that we've talked about on this show before. With a wildly different sound and direction as well, in Bad Rabbits, and their newest album, American Nightmare. Bad Rabbits is a group we talked about before on the show. Let's start with Brett. What expectations did you have coming into this album?
Well, I mean, I remember listening to Bad Rabbits. You know, I remember the reviewing American Love. The funk, the synths, making songs about getting some booty, that was kind of what I was expecting. I was unawares of the swaparoo change of sound until I got into the album.
Yes, and we'll talk about it there in the next round. Patrick, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
So I had already listened to this album by the time you announced it because I love Bad Rabbits. The title being American Nightmare after their last album was called American Love, kind of that should tell you all you need to know about what you're about to walk into. This is a sharp left turn from songs about baby making.
Mm-hmm. And Drew, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
Well, I'll not do the expectations of when I was coming to this album when you announced we were listening to it, and I will do the expectations of when I first listened to it, which was when you said, "Hey, there's a new Bad Rabbits out. You guys should see that there's a new Bad Rabbits out," when it hit. And my reaction was, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna get some more dancey funk music from the dancey funk music makers." That was
those. We'll talk about this.
I think we've kind of spoiled it a little bit. I was wrong.
Yeah. So this is definitely a completely different sound. You know, switching from American Love, which is the other album we talked about, to American Nightmare. This was more leaning towards their rock half of their funk rock sound. Still kind of bringing in the elements that they know to bring in different ways. Some hip hop influences, some funk, some R&B influences in there, but it's mostly a rock record. It's much more emotional record. It kind of brings in some elements of post-hardcore or emo sound, just with a different, just with no Quaalude mouth, in some aspects in there. It is a cool, interesting record. It is still a mix of sounds. It is still you can still get the great vocals out of Fredua Bouquet. You still have the really good music, really good instrumentals on there. It is just a really cool mix of sound, really cool, different signature Bad Rabbit sound, but with a much kind of darker feeling to it, to say the least. Brett, what would be the themes and elements that caught your attention on this album?
All right, everybody. Rock music, rap music. Two great tastes that taste great together. Sometimes. This isn't your Run DMCs and Aerosmiths. It's not your post House of Pain Everlast. It's not Willie Nelson and Snoop Dogg doing that weird Americana-like song. This is the Bad Rabbits.
We just buried a lead here. There's a Willie Nelson Snoop Dogg song that I'm not familiar with.
Yes, there is.
Fuck, I gotta go listen to that after this.
Don't
excited.
expect too much.
I'm
but
not. But that's exciting. They're probably talking about a lot of weed.
I believe that is covered.
Yes.
If we were doing themes and elements of the Snoop Dogg and Willie Nelson song, that'd probably be written down.
Yes.
In words on a chalkboard behind me is weed.
Hello, weed.
There.
Check out.
So Bad Rabbits, the Bad Rabbits that I had sampled, it's the synth and funk rock foundation. But instead on this album they took that and they were like, nah, and they were like, let's throw some emo rock in here. And there's a marked decline in booty shaking funk. I would say there's probably not a whole lot. And content-wise, they shifted almost entirely their lyrical and thematic stylings from the other time. But like when we get into songs, I'll be able to zero in on where the funk isn't. But if this is very much this is about as different as you can get from one album to the next. This is even just like Sgt. Pepper weirdness. This is some crazy shit for a band of the same name to put out such two very, very different sounding albums is noteworthy.
Yes, definitely noteworthy. Patrick, what would be the themes and elements that caught your attention on this album?
So as we talked about before, their previous album, American Love, is an album about having a good time and it's about dancing and fucking. That's what the last album's about, and that's the thing you need in the world. This is an album where like all the fun and optimism of American Love has just been removed and replaced with existential dread and sort of very on topics of the last few years in the world. This is real different. You can still tell it's the same band. I mean, Fred Dua's vocals are as good as ever on this. The music's super tight, and you still, it's got good grooves and everything. There's still some cool synth stuff going on, but there ain't any funk here. Which is, that's a big departure, both thematically and musically. The quality of the album I thought was really good though. Like it's intense and it's heavy, both musically heavy. Like there's what is effectively, screamed post-hardcore vocals, mixed in with, the pretty stuff. But also like thematically it's heavy. Like there's songs on this album about like real ass shit, not,
Hey, booty's some real ass shit.
Yeah, but
Booty is always the most real ass shit.
Yes.
Emphasis on the ass.
like this is basically like the way the internet talks about how shit 2016 was summed up in an album. A band that went from like the happiest, most wonderful, make you feel good about the world sound to like fuck all this shit.
Yeah, it's a much more emotional sound. I will say it's definitely also gutsy. The fact that they had a sound that was primed for success, courtesy primarily due to Bruno Mars hitting with that sound after they had cultivated it already, but they decided to go another way. Drew, what themes and elements did caught your attention on this album?
Well, after completely falling in love with American Love and the Bad Rabbits sound on there, that catchy, fun, sort of like funky dance record that they had, like coming into this was sort of a shock to the system as far as the sound goes, but not completely surprising when like think back about it, because like in between American Love and this, like they came There was some covers put out. There was an acoustic record or acoustic EP put out and stuff like that. And there was some showing of very weird influences that, like, if you just listen to American Love, you wouldn't necessarily see. I mean, they had a Deftones cover come out on YouTube. And while I'm probably in the minority in this group of very much enjoying the Deftones, not really what you would think of when you hear an album like American Love. Is something I think you would think of when you hear an album like American Nightmare. There are definitely tinges of that sort of side of rock and roll to it. But the musicality, which I think is an important part of this, is still really there. The vocals, we can all talk about those ad nauseum because it is a big part of this band. And the swelling vocals are there, but there's also times where he does devolve into sort of a half yell, sort of like growly, stiff upper lip sort of delivery to it, which I think is really necessary for parts of this album because of the things they are trying to say in the lyrics. The bass, especially in a couple of songs, is just so utterly perfect for what it is, like what this album is. There's a thickness and a thump there that I think is really cool, and there are times where actually, like, I feel like the rest of the musicians are all almost following a lead from the bass player and where they should fit in, which I think is really, really different. The synthy keyboardy stuff in this is also very, very good. And all of it seems to take this like a darker, like hard rock sort of tone to it, which sort of follows suit with the more political stance they're taking in a lot of the songs on this record. And that isn't without merit for sure. What I think is really cool, especially doing this right after the Gambino record, Awaken My Love, is that this is also tipping a hand at some of those other influences that they have that may not have came out in American Love. And I really, really dig that, and I can really, really respect that. You get influences from, like, there are parts that sound to me like they've taken influences from, like, the Deftones, like, maybe, like, super early, like, Bad Brain stuff, like, 311 in there at places, and at times, like, it's really, really cool stuff, and it's, while it's a very much darker tone, it was still, like, fun to listen to because of, I think, how well it was made and how well it was sort of put together there.
Yeah, I agree. Like, some of those things come together just beautifully. When we talk about some of the key tracks, we could talk about some of the very different styles and very different tracks. We talk about just doing the record breakers thing. Talk about Stalker. It's a very fascinating opening to the album. I think, I don't know if you could say it sets the tone. It gives you the cross section, but it definitely sets the tone for the album right off the bat. To let you know that American Nightmare is a different album than the past, and does a great job of that with kind of the mood of it all. And then Original, kind of a really cool like manifesto track for the group of how they're going to come original and whatever they do. And then, as we talked about, we touched upon the topical aspects. We have WWYD, or What Would You Do, where it just addresses straightforward some of the harsh topics, some of the things that are happening in the world, in your face and out there, like with a true punk rock spirit, I think, which is really great. And I think really, really emotional and really, really confrontational. And I really enjoyed that. I'll leave it to you guys because you might be able to elaborate a little bit better. Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, I sort of wrote my notes down as a stream of consciousness, so I'm going to try, and these are notes revision. There was a haiku lost in the great battles that I've been through in the last couple of weeks. But no, Original is a song that they took the time to make a video for. So I was like, okay, let's get into there. I will say that the song starts off with like a bunch of people trying to pump you up, and like they've got a beat and a guy yelling like back the fuck up, and then like as soon as it comes in, you get this like squishy jangle guitar chord, making the greatest left turn that I wasn't expecting, and really setting me up for the rest of the album. That every time the listening to the first few seconds of that track, I was like, wow, this is. Also check the video out because they made one and it's out there. WWYD. That you get some synth. Actually, it's other than the newsreel with static and like the changing of a radio station as station wagon by hitting the button, like from the 70s type stuff. There was some synth pad underneath, just straight up lyrics, which is a little different. Also, it's a protest song. Go figure. That's like this isn't a protest album per se. I wouldn't say there's a lot of different things covered on this album, but it definitely has a protest song. So if you're into that, it's got some of that for you. Then Flames was another song that stuck out with me. It's another straight up teen movie soundtrack song, just waiting for a script. You get like a layer cake guitar lick with some reverb modulation, and there's some swell in the drum and bass and some string chorus synth. It's got a whole lot of stuff going on. There's like there is a big left turn that was made from one album to the next, but at least there's still a variety. You're not stuck with one sound for the whole album. There is quite a bit of variety, even more so than just the songs that I picked out. But yeah, like getting past this is like if you would have given me this album and not told me who it was, I would not have guessed in a million years that this was the same band. So hopefully if listen to this album and you'll know. You should have done your homework anyway.
Yes. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Stalker, the opener. This is like you're immediately like it's just darker than anything on the prior record. It is the closest to a song about baby making on the record. That's as close as they get. It is, I guess, closing the book on American Love and opening the book on American Nightmare. And I feel, and this all sort of talk about like the two albums when you put them together are very much two completely opposite sides of a coin, and both are things that bands have written about forever. I mean, we've had music that's very, politically minded, talking about issues, and we've had albums about, baby making. And this is the latter after an album that was pretty much all the former. Game of Chess. I liked the synths in here, and it had this really, really good gang vocal on it, and gang vocals are just, when done right, are really, really good. And then basically for the chorus itself, Save Yourself, because Freddie Wa's voice is fucking incredible, and that song, like, it is just a showcase of how good of a singer he is and what kind of range he has. The guy can go real high without losing power, and also scream and be, someone who probably at least at one point in his life was probably in a punk band. And like, you see videos of these guys on tour wearing glass shell jackets, like they're punk kids. Like I remember I missed an opportunity to see them open for Taking Back Sunday like 4 or 5 years ago before I knew who they were. But and like they toured with punk bands, and this you really see that hard edge come back out in a way that I didn't know they had in them. And it is very much a counterpart in every way to the prior record, in that it is very, very different thematically and musically, but you can still see the threads that tie them together.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
So I'm gonna go with original first, because I got a lot to say about that one, more than the other two. But original, oh my gosh, the bass effect on that song in particular was something else. Just that like thick, like growl distortion that's sort of on it is just so cool. It kind of hits you in your chest, like right there at the beginning. And everything in this song, like I was saying before, feels like it's playing off of that low end rumble that the bass is getting through, which I think is really cool. The vocal muscle that's being flexed on the song is completely unfair, I think, to most other bands out today, just because it's always been in the wheelhouse. So it's kind of perfectly why this band can't stay in one genre is that vocal. It has crazy influences, and that is okay, and I think that's kind of cool. There's also a moment in the bridge that, when I said 311 earlier, like the bridge on this song is specifically what I was thinking about when I thought about that, which I think is kind of all right. Early 311 was really good. They went to a weird place later on, but early 311 was, I think, kind of cool. Game of Chess. This song sort of like hit me out of nowhere on this album, and I think that's okay. I think it's kind of cool. There are things I'm sort of a sucker for. Staccato hits, swelling, crazy, like, vocals that are big and powerful, and synths that make awesomely weird noises. Guess what this song had a lot of? All three of those things. And it kind of packages it into, like, a fist-pumpy, like, fight song, which, again, is just kind of cool. And then the closer, Push. I didn't go with the opener, so I figured I might as well go with the closer. The song is 6 minutes long, and holy hell does it go places. It starts out sort of more in your face and ends the record in this, like, really sort of slow, quiet, serene sort of area, which I think is just this song in general is a perfect slice of what this album sort of is at times, which I think is cool.
Yeah. And it definitely, like, it just has a cool motivational factor to that track at the end, and like, but yeah, it has such a cool energy, such a fantastic energy on that track. I guess I'll bring it back around the horn to kind of get some conclusive thoughts. Brett, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album overall?
I mean, I understand bands change, and you know, not all music is made for Brett and his taste. But they went from the kind of music I'm really into to a kind of music that I'm kind of, more often than not you know, jumping over myself trying to listen to. So that kind of bums me out a little bit. But you know, if that's the music that they want to make, then you know what, they can make whatever music they want. And anything they make now does not take away from the albums that they've made before, because that ain't how it works. But you know, this is a good exercise. I'm curious to see what in the future they decide to do. Maybe they will do a whole nother swap of sound. They'll come out doing hip hop and country a la Willie Nelson, Snoop Dogg. You know, who knows?
I was going to say maybe they'll do a complete Bo Diddley cover record.
Yeah, you know, I would be
totally no Diddley.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that, you know, I'm speechless now. But
I wrote Brett. Woo.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But you know, I'm not mad at this album. It's just not something I'm super into.
Yeah. Patrick, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album as a whole?
So, as somebody who grew up an obnoxious punk kid who complained about bands selling out, which is when you go make all the songs that sound like your one hit single, this is the exact opposite. This is we had an album that was really good and people liked, and we're going to do something totally different. And my guess is, and I'm assuming a lot here, is that the way they felt, when they wrote American Love is not the way they feel about the world now, and they just felt like they couldn't write another album like that, so they said, "Fuck it, let's write how we feel now." And that's very much like we talked about with Childish Gambino about like him wanting to do something different and not be pigeonholed, and not being afraid to try something new. This is a band not afraid to try something new. I want the funk back, and that's not to say I didn't enjoy this. I think this is a really solid record. I think musically it's really well executed. I wanted more happiness because I kind of need that. But I'm glad they did it because again, like it's the easy thing is always to make the super consumable happy stuff and try to sell a million records. This is make music that means something to you as the artist, and I think that's worth celebrating.
Yeah. Drew, what would be your conclusive thoughts on the album?
I was actually I feel like a lot more favorable about this record. Because I really, really, really like this record a lot. And if I would have gotten this 3-4 years ago, it would have been something that might have been in regular rotation. Nowadays, the way like I just listen and consume music is usually when I'm trying to either focus on things or when I'm having an excuse to dance and be dumb and like have a good time. I'm not listening to music to think about things mostly anymore, which I guess is kind of Swagger's point, like kind of wanting more happy stuff, which is fine. But like this record is just really phenomenally made. In my opinion, I really kind of like the range that they're going with and how they sort of changed up their sound, and it's something completely different from what you were used to in American Love. And while American Love will be getting more play from me, this record makes me excited for what's coming next, because before, like I said to start this out, I came into this record when I first saw, New Bad Rabbits. I came into it with like, oh, sweet, I get more funky dance stuff. And this, it was not even in the same goddamn ballpark. Like, not even close. So the fact that it could be that different from these guys, but still be that well made, makes me excited for what's the next thing. Like, and that, I think, that sort of optimism of they can really just go out there and do whatever at this point, and I'm probably going to be happy with the final product, even if it's not something that gets regular play in my rotation. I think it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a really gutsy departure, really ballsy departure for Bad Rabbit, and I like it. Like, that's why I brought it here. It is a really cool, different sound. It's still a nice amalgamation of like a bunch of their influences. It's a super emotional and honest record. It is well made. It is super interesting to kind of sit down and kind of wrap around your brain and kind of beat your head with in a way. And it's so cool. Like the easy thing, because with the fact that they had been doing that previous sound, the American Love sound, for years. They've been together since 2007, and they've been doing something of that sound or with those influences and things like that since then. And that sound famously kind of got brought into the mainstream by Bruno Mars with his previous couple records and similar sounds as well. And the easy thing would have been to all right, rising tides, raise all ships. Let's ride this tide and keep playing this sound. But it didn't feel right for them, or I mean, I don't know. I guess it didn't feel right for them. They decided to do what was more real to them and was more real to how they felt now. and this is that album, and it's a nice counterpoint. It's a beautiful counterpoint to American Love. It is really well made, and I'm glad that it's there, and I'm glad we got to listen to it. Bad Rabbits are a fantastic, great group, and I'm looking forward to more from what they can do. More of their kick-ass music, and I'm glad.
So would you say this was a Jefferson airplane to Jefferson Starship jump, or a Jefferson Starship jump to Starship? Like this is I can't think of a band that has swapped sounds so dramatically. Like,
yeah,
I that will be my ongoing. If I see it, I will make sure to let you know.
yes. Once we figure it out, we'll let you all know. But yeah, those are our thoughts. Now we get ourselves to the main event of the. Ooh, a little irpy.
Take some time, Petey. You're playing hurt.
We get to our main event of the evening. Ugh, yeah. We get to our haiku reviews. We sum it all up in poetic form. I'll maintain same initiative order. Brett, what is your haiku?
A different sound, even more so than I thought. It's all right to change.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Serious subjects and no baby making songs. A bold change in sound.
Mm-hmm. Drew, what is your haiku?
Great musicianship in a different package. Nothing like before.
Mm-hmm. And my haiku, multi-flavored band, a huge change in direction, a great gutsy move. Yeah, courage, bravery. Those are our thoughts on Bad Rabbits, American Nightmare. You can of course follow along, listen along with us at home. With our Spotify playlist, Record Breakers the Home Game, linked on every episode page over on recordbreakerspodcast.com in the show notes. So you can follow along, subscribe, keep up with us, do the homework. On that Spotify playlist will be next week's record, and that'll be provided by Patrick. Patrick, what do you got for us next week?
I'm going to pick an old band who did a new record, Dinosaur Jr. and their album, Give a Glimpse of What You're Not.
Mm-hmm. So look forward to that discussion. Well, we're kind of keeping the new record train going. So it's going to be really cool to talk about that next week. But that's next week, and this is this week. You can, of course, find us all over the internet. Patrick is at The Swagger. Brett is at HeyBittyBreadBird, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XJuicer4X. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com if you want to email us. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and a few other places. Find us on iTunes, on Stitcher, on all over the place, on different platforms. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Toodaloo.